Now let me start this off with a couple of tragic stories I've heard before. Like a man who was once going to change his newborn baby's diaper, and when he had the baby on the high table, he then turned around to grab a diaper. The baby had rolled over, rolled off the table, and died. I also know someone who had an older brother who had been riding his motorcycle and he got into an accident and died. And there's just a lot more tragic stories out there. Now I can pause and maybe a lot of you can relate to this. You may have had the same experience or probably even worse. But part of consolidation, people say, well, this is a part of God's plan. But in all honesty, that isn't true. That is not part of God's plan at all. This also coincides with that funny meme that Earl of Grey and other traditional Catholics online like to post on Twitter that says, if God exists, why bad things happen? Pretty much making fun of the atheists who say that. Now sometimes we like to think that God is in control. God is in control of everything. Well, yes and no. God is intimately involved in everything, but God is not in control of everything. In Revelations, it was revealed that the moment God created something outside of himself, he voluntarily gave up a certain degree of power. The moment God created humans, the moment he created physics and thermodynamics, he gave up a certain degree of power. He is not in control of you, and he is not in control of his angels. Because some pray and hope that God can take away some human freedom and give us back our child, give us back our parents, etc. But God wills that you and I retain our freedom. It doesn't mean that God is distant. He is involved with every moment of our lives. And because he's involved, it doesn't mean that everything that happens is therefore part of his plan. There are God's perfect will that we need to make a distinction from. His essence is goodness, life, love, reason, truth, and wisdom. So all of those are directly part of his willing things. When something ever happens, that's not something bad happens, that's not a part of God's perfect will. That is what we call God's permissive will. So for the child that fell off the table, no, that is not his will. That was his permissive will. God didn't want it to happen. He allowed it to happen, but he didn't want it to happen. He created a world where he is not a tyrant. He is not in control of every little thing, but sometimes people wish he can stop the laws of physics and thermodynamics and just strip us of our human freedom. But even God deems our freedom as a greater good than the suspension of our freedom for human security and safety. One, you can always place your faith in God and trust what he is doing is good. He knows that within evil, God can bring about a greater good. Remember, God is not our tyrant. He is a good father. So that is why God allows bad things to happen. Free will is part of why God doesn't take away our freedom, even if it is unfortunate that we might do bad things. Just like he gave Adam and Eve the free will, even if it meant that they will disobey God. So God allows these things to happen, not because he wants them to happen, but because he knows freedom is a greater good. And secondly, God can bring about a greater redemption through even the most horrible things that happen. This is a word of hope because most people think, damn, seems like God is just going to let things happen. No, God doesn't will evil. Even when evil happens, it was never for God's plan. When someone is attacked and brutalized or dies tragically, that was not part of God's plan. But God knows that he can take a broken thing, your destroyed heart and destroyed life, and bring it back to life. God can even bring things that are dead back to life. God not only can, but he wants to. His perfect will is to bring about a greater good.